been a few months since this all started, I think. I haven't really been keeping track. And with being locked up in this shed for who knows how long, it's even harder to keep track. All I have in this stupid, cramped place is a phone that's practically dead and this sketchbook that I've turned into a little journal. Writing in here is helping, though. I think it's about time that I actually start to face what's been happening in the world. It's gotten far too horrible to just ignore. From what I remember, it all started with the flowers. I remember hearing about them before I actually started seeing them. It sounded so ridiculous. Flowers growing out of people? That's just not possible, I thought. Even when I started seeing flowers sprouting out of classmates, I still didn't believe it was actually a thing. I thought it was just some kind of cosmetic, some new fashion trend or something. I mean, the flowers are quite pretty and unique. They're mostly magenta in the middle, fading out into this soft purplish color. But they do have these weird vein-looking things coming out from the middle that are black, and then red wavy circles going around. It's not like any other flower I've seen before. But people were freaking out for a bit. That is, until almost everyone had a flower growing out of them. It didn't seem to cause any issues other than being a bit itchy when a new one sprouted. Some people even started talking about how much happier they'd been feeling lately. I was the last in my family to sprout anything. I might have even been the last in the town. I couldn't pretend it wasn't there then. No one has outright said it, but I'm pretty sure this whole thing is some kind of disease, and a contagious one at that. I don't usually go outside much, and I almost never get sick, so maybe that's why it took so long for it to get to me. Even now, I still don't have that many growing out of me, but I have noticed that since I locked myself away in here, I've sprouted a few more on my neck and arms. I'm not sure why just yet. Anyway, I watched my family change a lot since this whole thing started. It was like they were becoming completely different people. Not only in personality, but in looks too. I noticed their skin started to darken around some of the bigger flowers growing out of them. And I started seeing their veins too. Like just below their skin, but not blue or red like you'd expect. It was more like black, like the patterns on the flowers. It looked painful, but they didn't seem to be in pain. And they became happier too. My mom and dad, always so stressed from working so much, started smiling all the time. I remember they would talk to each other about how much calmer and stress-free they felt. My brother, Damien, was the same, but I guess he was more intense. Actually, everything about him became more intense. He grew a lot more flowers than me or my parents, and it was like everything that was bothering him disappeared overnight. He was always a nice, outgoing guy, but he wasn't naive. He was also wary about the flowers at first, like me, but that quickly changed. Soon, he couldn't stop talking about them. He was convinced that they were the reason everything was going right in the world and with him. He and my parents weren't the only ones. Everyone started thinking that way, and everyone started giving it a name. Serenity. Named after the way people start to feel after they sprout enough flowers. But with how everyone seemed to be acting, Damien was definitely the worst. He loved the serenity. It was all very weird, but I admit I was a bit jealous. With how much he and my parents were talking about everything, I mean, who wouldn't want to be lifted of all their stresses and worries? I know I could use some of that right about now. At some point, I stopped seeing him as much. He stopped going to work entirely and would just go out to who knows where during the day. And he would always only come back in the evenings. That is, until he stopped leaving the house altogether. At that point, the flowers were growing all along his leg and arm. His hair was falling out in clumps, and even more serenity were growing out of his neck and face. Any skin that could be seen was either completely black or covered in dark veins. And with how much was growing out of him, he began tearing and ripping at the parts of his clothes covering up the serenity. He couldn't walk on his leg anymore and was bedridden, but that didn't dampen his mood. I visited him in the room often, took care of him and fed him. My parents wouldn't do it. At that point, they were pretty bad too. Worse than everyone else in this town, but not quite as bad as Damien. They could still take care of themselves. I hardly wanted to be around them anymore. They would just lie around, laughing and talking with each other. For any issue I brought up, they would just laugh it off and tell me to relax and eat with them. They were always eating, and so was Damien. He ate a lot, way more than what was normal, way more than a typical person should eat. No matter how much food I brought him, he would only demand more and more with a smile on his face. I grew to hate that stupid smile. It felt like I was the only rational one there. I didn't know what was happening. I tried calling doctors. They wouldn't come. But they didn't care either. But to be honest, whatever this disease is, I don't think anyone knows how to cure it. I don't think anyone wants to cure it. And then, one day, I returned home from buying groceries for the house with my mom's card. I mean, it's not like she was going to use it, lounging around on the couch all day. And so I walked in and I saw blood. I saw blood. That was the first thing I saw. A lot of it. The groceries slid out of my hands and my eyes started up. The first thing I thought was that there was a robber. Maybe some crazy murderer who came in and attacked my family. But then I saw my brother standing right there in the middle of the living room. He was standing for the first time in weeks, but he wasn't looking at me. He was looking at the ground and shoveling something into his mouth. Something bloody. It had been a while since I last fed him. From where I was standing, I couldn't see below his waist as my vision was blocked by the couch. My mouth opened and closed a few times, trying to form words. Blood was dripping from his mouth, I remember. Glistening white teeth stained with red and clenched together in a smile that no longer felt genuine. And there was blood all over his clothes and on his hands. I should have run, but it just didn't click in my head. I stepped forward enough to see over the couch, and I saw my parents strewn across the floor. Literally strewn across it. There was an arm on one side of the room and a leg on the other. Their stomachs were torn open, emptied out, and even worse, they were still smiling. I just felt this overwhelming sense of fear. My body started trembling so hard, and my vision became blurry from tears. I think I might have thrown up, or maybe I blacked out. No, that's not right. I couldn't have blacked out because then suddenly Damien's head snapped around to stare right at me and everything stopped. My heart stopped, my trembling stopped, and my breathing stopped. The only thought that was going through my mind was, what is he going to do to me? Then he launched himself over the couch at me. My legs moved before my brain could catch up, and I guess I had the advantage of still being right next to the front door. So even though it felt like I was moving far slower than I needed to, I got out of there and slammed the door shut. I didn't stick around to find out if he would follow, and ran to the closest building I knew. This shed in our backyard. For many, many days, I just lay here on the floor, all my bones locking up. I ignored the sweltering heat of this place, the mounds of dust, and the spiders that feel bigger than they should be. My mind just kept replaying everything I saw like a broken record, over and over and over again. I had no appetite, and there was no way I was going back out there. My senses were hyperactive, triggering at every tiny noise and causing me to freeze up. It felt like I could even hear the spiders crawling by. Eventually, hunger drew me out of my panic state. There was food in here. Old, slimy, stinky canned beans. Better than nothing. I fought the urge to vomit as I drank. And who knows how long it's been since then. Long enough for me to completely run out of stuff to eat, at least. I just can't go on like this. I'm scared. So scared. But if I don't get out of here, I'll starve to death. But if I do get out of here, I could die anyway. What if Damien is just outside the door? What if he's just waiting for me? What if the moment I step out, he devours me, just like he did with our parents? These are the thoughts that explode in my mind every time I so much as look at the door. I've been trying to convince myself that I'm overreacting and overthinking. If he were right outside the door, surely I'd hear him, right? Unless he's being really quiet. Or maybe he's waiting just a ways away. Far enough that I couldn't hear him, but close enough that he can see when I come out. No. I have to stop thinking like this. If I don't, I'll never get out of here. And I'd feel so much better if I could just get as far away from the house as possible. The only problem is that the important stuff that I would need is in the house. Like a bag, a jacket, a phone charger, mom or dad's wallet, stuff like that. But he could still be in there. Or maybe not. This is a classic zombie situation, but it's not like I'm a survival expert, and I definitely have not played enough zombie survival games to know what to do. No. I have to do this. If I can just think of a plan. Think through every possible scenario. Remember where everything is in the house so that I can get in and out as soon as possible. Plan a route and just go. Yeah, that's what I'll do. And when I'm ready, I'll go. It's been, I don't know, a week maybe? But I did it. I'm out of there. It all went so fast. I spent days just planning. I thought everything through, down to the specific spots on the wooden floor that would squeak if stepped on. I wrote my plan down in here, scratched it out, wrote it again, and just repeated that too many times to count. All that mental energy and no food weakened me. I couldn't stall forever. So I finally settled on something and spent a few hours just psyching myself up, telling myself that if Damien got his hands on me, it would probably be a quick death. Painful, maybe just for a second. And after a while, I creaked the door of the shed open and peeked out. The light of the sun was blinding. I closed the door immediately. There. That was it. But no, I couldn't let myself chicken out of it. I didn't want to die. So I opened it again and peeked out, quickly scanning the area as my eyes adjusted. I thought I saw a shadowy figure in the corner of my eye, but it was just nothing. I stayed frozen there for a few minutes before I finally got my stubborn legs to move. I crouched as low to the ground as I could while still being able to move, and crouch ran right up to the back door of the house. I looked through the little window in the door and saw nothing. The entire time, my heart was pounding in my throat, and I was just repeating the same thoughts over and over again. It's okay. He's not here. Just get in and out. So I opened the door slowly, very slowly. This was a door that creaks, after all. I opened the door and paused, listening. Nothing. I stepped inside and quickly ran through my planned route. The closet near the front door would have some jackets and bags. My parents' wallet and a phone charger would be in my room. That's where I had left them the last time I was here. Those were the two rooms I needed to get to. Just in and out. I repeated my mantra to myself again and again, and with a deep breath, a quiet one, of course, I stepped inside. From the back door, My room was the closest, so I went straight there, pausing every few steps to listen, avoiding spots I knew would creak. It took a while. I just needed to be extra careful. Every step brought me further inside and further away from my exit. If Damien were still here, the further I went in, the more vulnerable I would be. I reached my room faster than I thought I would. I listened at the door, still nothing. I stepped inside, closed the door and locked it. A moment of safety. I let out the breath I had been holding and quickly gathered the phone charger and wallets. It was a little awkward since I had to hold all of them in my hands. It might have been more convenient to go for the bag first, but that meant more time spent walking around. When I was ready, I left my room and made my way to the front of the house. The closet I needed was the one just next to the front door, which also happened to be where my dead parents were. But being in there for so long without seeing Damien or anyone else at all put my mind at ease, and I was a bit more calm. Still wary, but calmer. But that all came to an abrupt stop when I looked around the corner that led to the living room and front door, and I saw Damien. I froze, clamping my mouth shut to keep from making any noise, but I was screaming internally. I wanted to drop everything and run, but he wasn't even looking at me. He was curled up on the floor, asleep, maybe. The remains of my parents were still there, but there were fewer of them than last time. I could barely even recognize what was left. I thought that I needed to at least get the jacket, because there was no way I was sleeping in the house or the shed again, and there was a good chance I wouldn't be able to find any immediate shelter either, and I was in the house anyway, so I went for it. I crouched low to the ground and crept into the living room, ducking behind one of the couches. Then I waited and listened. When I strained hard enough, I could hear Damien's faint breathing, but nothing more. So I left my cover and quickly went behind the other couch, the one close to the front door. I wasn't careful enough. I stepped on a creaky floorboard and I heard Damien stir. I flattened myself to the ground, staying very, very still. I hoped with all my might that he would go back to sleep, but he didn't. I heard his clothes shuffle and his footsteps thump against the floor as he approached the sound of the creak. It was only a matter of time before he saw me. My eyes darted towards the closet door, and I thought back to my intense planning. Part of it was thinking of every location where I could hide if I needed to. From where I was, the closet was one. Somehow, I managed to dart inside before he could see me. But, of course, that stupid door just had to creak. I had barely bought myself even a little time, but I was in the closet. I didn't care about noise anymore. It was too late for that. I slammed the door shut and held it closed desperately as Damien slammed against and began pounding on it. Damien was stronger than me before all this. It would be ultimately useless, but it was the best I could do. Until I realized that Damien wasn't even trying to open the door. I could hear him growling and thrashing and banging on the door, but he wasn't trying to open it. That's when it dawned on me. Damien couldn't open doors. Not anymore. That was why he never left the house after all this time. I slowly let go of the doorknob, half expecting my conclusion to be wrong and for him to yank the door open, but he didn't. I spared no time and quickly grabbed a bag and the biggest jacket. Then I turned back to the door. Sure, Damien couldn't come in, but how was I supposed to get out and escape? Another idea came to my mind, a stupid one. I thought there was no way I could pull it off, but I had no other choice. I slipped the jacket on, my brother's apparently, and I stuffed the rest of what I had in the bag. I slung it over my shoulder and stepped closer to the door. Damien was still banging and screaming outside of it. It sounded like he was saying something. It sounded like English, but he wasn't making any actual words. I took a few deep breaths before I turned the handle, lifted my foot, and kicked as hard as I could against the door. The door slammed against him, hopefully hard enough to stumble him. I didn't wait to see as I ran faster than I had ever run before for the back door. He was blocking the front door after all. I'm not sure if I did actually manage to stun him or not, because he was soon chasing after me again, but his movements were sloppy, almost as if he wasn't exactly sure how to control his limbs anymore. But still, he was fast, and just before I could reach the door, he grabbed me by the leg and bit down hard just above my knee. I'm not exactly one to scream very loud, but at that moment I did. Never before had I felt such pain. His teeth sunk into my skin, drawing blood, and I just began kicking and struggling frantically. Somehow, in my frenzy, I managed to hit him and get away, tears streaming from my eyes. I burst out of the door and ran straight towards the fence gate. I desperately fumbled with the lock and darted out once I got it open, making sure to close it behind me. I could barely even feel the pain through my adrenaline as I ran and ran and ran. He wasn't following me. He couldn't because I had closed the fence door. But my brain wouldn't let me rest until I finally collapsed onto the floor. I don't know where I went exactly. Everything had been a blur as I was running. I rocked myself to calm down as I cried ugly tears. It took a while for my heart rate to finally slow a bit and for me to find my head, to convince myself that I was safer now. I didn't exactly fully believe myself, but I couldn't just stay there and let my leg bleed out. It was pure luck that got me out of there alive, and I couldn't waste that. And I don't really like being so exposed and out in the open anyway. My pain was starting to get back to me and really bother me. I wiped tears out of my eyes and examined where Damien bit me. The bite was nasty, not something I wanted to touch. I'm not a doctor, but it kind of looked like Damien had torn off some skin. And of course, there were rounded tooth marks around the area. The wound was red and bloody, but also had some black stains on it. That couldn't be good. Zombie logic tells me this means I'm going to turn into a zombie soon. But I already have flowers growing out of me, so it's not like I wasn't infected before. Still, this wasn't good. I pushed myself up and began limping through town, looking for a convenience store. Somewhere I could buy some basic medical supplies and food. Something I hadn't noticed as I was running away from Damien was the people. No one came to help me or ask what was wrong as I ran by and collapsed on the floor. No one paid me any mind as I cried and inspected the wound, and it was no different after I started looking for a store. There were people out in the street. Some were talking, others just walking or sitting around. Some would look at me and smile. Well, smile wider than they already were, But other than that, nothing. They reminded me of how my parents became before they, you know. How long exactly was I in that shed? The whole place was just off. I didn't like how the people looked at me. But hey, at least they weren't trying to eat me. Yet. I quickly found a convenience store and stepped inside. My eyes met with the store clerk, and he smiled widely at me. I recognized the store. I had gone there a few times before, and I had seen the cashier as well. Some guy around my age who clearly didn't want to be there, let alone interact with people. Not that time, though. No, he was smiling. Of course he was. I forced a weak smile back at him and began looking through the aisles. I quickly found everything I needed, including snacks, lots of them. The kind that you don't necessarily need a microwave or oven for. The kind that doesn't taste like 10-year-old, barely recognizable beans. My stomach growled loudly at the sight, though. I knew it was asking for real food, not this. But it was the best I could do. I also found some basic medical supplies. Again, I'm not a doctor, but I was able to find one of those compact, handy first aid kits. The kind with wraps, band-aids, medical tape and scissors, antiseptic spray, and a lot more. I also picked up a few water bottles. Then I went up to the cashier and unloaded my basket. I'd like to buy these, please. I stammered out. My voice was scratchy from all the screaming and crying, and hearing it speak normally for the first time in a while, I was shocked at myself. I must have looked like a mess, probably all pale and tired, scrawny from lack of food and bleeding all over the floor. Luckily, the cashier didn't seem to mind and nodded happily at my words. Then he started scanning, oh, so slowly. He tried making small talk with me too, something he'd never done before. It wasn't normal small talk though, just him rambling about his life and how everything is going so perfectly. He didn't ask about my state, why I was limping, or anything like that, but he definitely noticed. I could tell by the way he studied me so intently. When he was finally done, I quickly shoved all the things into my bag, then I turned to leave. But that was when he suddenly grabbed my arm. I froze, heart stopping. I slowly turned back to him. Let go, please.
It's a beautiful day outside. You should spend some time out in the sun.
I blinked at him for a moment, taking in his uncanny smile. Then I looked out the window. It was, in fact, a beautiful day outside. Beautiful by most people's standards, at least. Bright, sunny, and a rich blue sky. I looked back at the cashier and pulled my arm out of his grasp. His arm fell to his side and he just smiled. I nodded at him and got out of there as fast as I could. The sun outside was bright and hot, too hot for me to be wearing the jacket. But there was no way I was going to stay out in the open just to take it off. I began wandering, searching for some kind of shelter. I ate as I walked, chocolate candy bars and salty chips giving strength to my weak and starved body. I wandered until I was a little ways out of town, doing my best to ignore the pain running up my leg. Eventually, I stumbled upon this bridge I'm resting under now. It used to go over a small stream, but it dried up, leaving a small ditch underneath. There are some puddles down here, but it's mostly dry, and most importantly, cool and sheltered. I found a place to settle down and began treating the bite just above my knee. My phone was still almost dead, but it managed to stay alive long enough for me to watch a video on treating my wounds. I wish I had access to an outlet here, but it's probably going to be a while before I can charge it. I used some of the water from my water bottle to rinse the wound, treated it with antiseptic spray, and wrapped it in a bandage. And now, strangely enough, it feels a bit better. Still hurts, but I'm not putting any weight on it. And I'm still hungry, but I'm trying to save the food. This place is not ideal, but it's definitely a step up from that cramped, hot shed. And even if Damien somehow got out, he couldn't possibly find me here. I'm near the edge of town, underneath some bridge. For once in a long time, I can finally feel some kind of relief, but at the same time, loneliness. Damien and I were close before all of this. My parents and I were close. And when my parents were still alive, but infected, I didn't really care for them. I don't know. I guess I just felt they were being lazy. And maybe I was a little upset at having to do all the housework and take care of Damien. But they're gone now. And I regret thinking those things. And Damien is gone in a different way. I miss him. I miss all of them. I don't know what I'll do without them. My parents are dead, and Damien is... well, I don't know what he is. A zombie, I guess. I wish there was a cure. I'd do anything to get him back to his normal self, to be able to talk to him, maybe even give him a hug. I'm not smart enough to come up with a cure, though. I'm not smart enough to survive this whole thing either. Not with how scared I get. The only reason I'm still here to this day is just pure luck. But why me? I don't know what to do. Damien is who I would usually turn to for something like this. He'd know what to do. And he's great at thinking under pressure. Deep down, he's probably hoping I can save him. I don't think I can. But if our roles were switched, I think he'd be able to. Somehow, against all odds. I was lucky this time, but what about next time? And the next? Maybe I won't see Damien again, but what if there are others like him? I can't do this alone. If only there was someone here in this town that was normal. I'll take anyone. I'd even take someone who's even more of a coward than me. At least then, I wouldn't have to deal with all this alone. Though I'd probably prefer someone strong and capable. Surely there has to be someone else out there who's like me. Someone who's not a part of all this. Someone who has to survive. Yeah. Someone like that has to exist somewhere in this town. If only I could find them. Hey everyone, I'm Amethyst, and thank you for listening to the first episode of my new CreepyDrawsta series, Simulaflora. It has been way too long since I posted my last CreepyDrawsta, and I am so sorry for that. I've been caught up with my FNAF fan game and planning all the details and lore for this story. And I am so glad to say that I am done with all that planning and can now focus on writing and producing these stories for you. Please let me know what you think and look forward to episode 2. But anyway, that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching, and please consider liking and subscribing if you haven't already to see more of this kind of content. And if you're interested in more of my CreepyDrawsta content, check out my CreepyDrawsta playlist or subscribe for more stories in the future. Take care and farewell.